Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the N.E.S.T podcast. I hope you've all had an amazing Christmas. I hope you've all had an amazing time over the holidays. If you're watching this without video, I apologise. We've had some technical difficulties with the camera, so you might just have to listen to my my boring voice for a while on YouTube. However, again, I hope you've had a good holiday. Hopefully you guys have a lot planned for the next year, for 2021. Hopefully it treats us a little bit better. So without any hesitation or any further delay, let's get into the podcast. So episode 5 I believe we're on now, which is actually insane. I completely didn't realize we're on episode 5. So we're talking about the most useless supplements. Now before I get into this any further, I just want to say thank you to the sponsor of this video, which is Hercules.co.uk. Hercules, as is written on my top, so that would be HERCXLES. So without the U, replace the U with an X.co.uk. Decent gym wear, really good hoodies. I love their hoodies; they're so comfy. So go get yourself one. And yeah, no, let's get into the podcast. So this podcast was just suggested by Jack__Clark on Instagram. And it is the most useless and the most useful supplements. Now, these are in no particular order, okay? And can I just point out that this is my personal opinion backed up by science, okay? So when it comes to this, like most useless stuff, it's always going to be personal opinion, because quite frankly, like that's the way the cookie crumbles. Like I can say that something is useless because it's like, let's say, I'll give an example. I think that bulk shakes are useless. However, some other people might find them a lot better because it's convenient. So you get a lot of your calories in, and it's convenient and stuff like that. In a short amount of time, you don't have to cook, basically. So that's this. Keep in mind, this is going to be my opinion, so take it with a pinch of salt. However, I will have, as always, science backing it up, because I love myself a good little bit of research. If you're watching on YouTube, do you like the little addition of the light? I like it. It's really cool. So without any further ado, let's get into the most useless supplements. Coming in at number 1. And I will always have this as my number 1, because in my head it is absolutely pointless in having it. Okay, number 1, we've got a fat burner. Okay, now let me quickly say some things that might insult a few people, but nonetheless I will say them because they're true. Fat burners are bullshit. Okay, they claim that they increase your metabolic rate. They claim to do this, that, the other. I'm sorry, but what they're doing is they're basically making you piss and shit more. Okay, that's pretty much the only way in which they work. Okay, is they make you pee and poo a little bit more. Why? Because they're a diuretic, and some of them are even a laxative. I'm going to quick turn down my volume on my microphone, because I see a lot of spikes popping off on Audacity, and that's not, you hate to see that. So yeah, they're terrible, absolute waste of money. So those of you who do not know, fat burners are basically a dietary supplement which claims to increase fat oxidation, or in more common terms, fat loss. Okay, so it claims to increase fat loss. Again, in my eyes, and you'll see that like in a lot of places, most fat burners, they just tend to make you pee and poo a little bit more, and their properties are pretty much, I don't want to say non-existent, but they're not significant. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at these. I've got my notes up here as per usual. So there's, oh God, I can't pronounce the name. Randall and Jackendrup. Okay, anyway, Randall and Jackendrup, they looked into popular fat burner components, right? So popular fat burners, some of the most popular fat burners include CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid. We got there eventually. Conjugated, Jesus Christ. Just CLA. I'll just call it CLA. Look it up. I can't pronounce that word. I'm sorry. So CLA, caffeine, and tea. Specifically green tea. Okay. Now green tea has been known to actually give your metabolism a little bit of a boost. Again, not a crazy amount. So CLA we'll get into a little bit, but let's go with caffeine first and green tea. They both had fat burning properties. All right, so they did increase fat oxidation. They did burn off a little bit of extra fat every here and there. However, the effects were minor and borderline non-significant. Okay, so when you look, right, so in science we've got something we call you say statistical significance, which basically means if I was to, let's say, take a human being and make them do a bench press, and I made them do it once, and they got a 1 rep max of 100, is that statistically significant? No. What would be statistically significant is if I got that, sorry, I got really itchy nose, if I got that individual to do that bench press over 5, 10, 15, 20 times, and they constantly got it around the same amount, that would be statistically significant, because that shows that it's not just a fluke, it's not just a one-off. So the statistical significance here was minimal. Now, by the way, that's the way I very simply that's not the scientific way of explaining statistical significance, but that is the easiest way I could possibly kind of explain it, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you come at me for that, then I don't really have enough time to fully go into statistical significance, and it's not really that interesting to do a full podcast on. Now, that's tea and caffeine, right? Green tea and caffeine. CLA, there was no conclusive evidence is lacking, which means that there is not enough evidence to actually make a good, very well-rounded conclusion. So at the moment, CLA is a little bit more of a meh end, so I wouldn't recommend you spending money on anything like that. So then we've got the presumed mechanisms of each one of these, right? So I took a few of them. I took caffeine, green tea extract, L-carnitine, and then CLA. We're not going to try and say that word again. Conjugated linoleic acid. I'm pretty sure I butchered that again, but it is what it is, so we'll just go with it. So these are, again, oversimplified, because if I was to go through each of the pathways, the metabolic pathways for these, it would take a while, and we would probably be sat here for another 20 minutes while I try to get these out. So I've basically just taken I've taken the result. I haven't taken the method in which they work in, I've just taken the result. So I'm just going to tell you exactly what they do. We're going to skip the middle bits. So caffeine causes 4 things. So number 1, we've got Jesus Christ, my words today. Antagonism of adenosine receptors, right? Number 2, we've got stimulation as the sympathetic nervous system. 3, we've got hormone-sensitive lipase, which is HSL, driven lipolysis. Those who do not know, lipo is fat. Oh, hello. I just pulled something. Lipo is fat. Lipogenesis means the generation of fat. Lipolysis means the burning of fat. Okay? And then inhibition to lipogenesis, right? So those are the main things that caffeine does that would promote being a fat burner, right? So that would prevent lipogenesis. So inhibition of lipogenesis, perfect. That's exactly what we want. Top tier. You don't want new fat cells to be created as such. Hormone sensitive lipase driven lipolysis, so that's basically just a fancy way of saying it burn fat through HSL, which is hormone sensitive lipase. stimulation of sympathetic nervous system, and antagonism of adenosine receptors. Those are just a few of the mechanisms that are presumed that it works through. I'm not going to go into explain those last two. If you fancy looking them up, feel free. So number 2, green tea extract. All right, this is going to be a long one. Increased sympathetic nervous system sensitivity, so the same thing as caffeine. HSL driven lipolysis again, so we're seeing a lot of similarities already. Increased expression of genes involved in beta oxidation of fatty acids. So don't worry about the complicated words here. We're looking at 4 words. So increased oxidation fatty acids. So remember what we said, oxidation of fat basically means lipolysis. So the genes that are involved in beta oxidation of fatty acids, which means the genes that actually help with lipolysis, were increased in expression, which means that they were excited as such, which means they worked a little bit more. That's the very, very non-sciencey way of me explaining it. Appetite suppression, that could be because it fills up the stomach. So those who do not know, you've got 2 ways that your stomach can tell you it's full. Number 1, it can tell you by how many calories it's got. So that's one thing, and that's I believe that's one of them actually. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember the second one is a mechanical response, which means that the second it realizes that it's full, it's like, well, hold your horses, big boy, we don't want to get any bigger, you know what I mean? So there's a mechanical response, there's a chemical response. The mechanical response is literally just the tissue realizes that it starts to stretch because it's like, hang on a sec, I'm full here. So appetite suppression could very much be because of the mechanical response to being full. And then it also has reduction of glucose absorption by inhibiting certain enzymes. They're called GIT enzymes, GIT, but reduction of glucose absorption, which means that glucose is basically carbs, okay? And glucose basically being stored in your body it can get stored as fatty acids. Not necessarily, but it also creates fat. Okay, that's the easiest way of me explaining it. So reduction in glucose absorption means that more of it gets flushed out the other end as such. So that, green tea, if anything, I would probably say that caffeine and green tea are probably the most researched fat burners, and I still wouldn't I hate the term fat burners. They increase fat oxidation, all right? They're not fat burners, they just increase fat oxidation. They're fat burning helpers, if you would. So L-carnitine, there's only one thing here, and that is conversion of fatty acids to acylcarnitine and transfer to mitochondrial matrix, which facilitates the uptake of fatty acids into muscle and increases oxidation. Again, I know it's a very long sentence. Acylcarnitine, mitochondrial matrix. There's a lot of complex words in there, but again, there's a few words we need to pick out here. Facilitates uptake of fatty acids into muscles, and the last 2 increases oxidation. All right. So L-carnitine does have one mechanism, but again, remember these are presumed mechanisms. Okay. Now again, CLA increases uptake of fatty acids into muscles. So same thing with L-carnitine. Reduction of food intake by reducing neuropeptide Y expression. So again, very, very in-depth stuff, but basically reduction of food intake by releasing a neuropeptide. Mind stuff. Not really, but neuro does actually mean like things revolving around the brain. Now, decreasing inactivity of proteins involved in de novo lipogenesis. De novo, specifically in physiology, is a Latin term, and de novo means new. So this would mean new lipogenesis, so new fat. Okay, so new fat cells. So it decreases the activity of proteins that cause new fat cells to emerge. Now, with fat burners, I've also got a small little table here which actually helps out a lot, and I literally just stole this table from a study. I believe it is actually Jacobin in 2009 that I got this from. Now, this has potential adverse effects in synthetic adult, whatever the hell that is. So basically, in synthetic fat burners, synthetic adulterants, I think. Yeah. So diuretics, which is a lot of caffeine is actually a diuretic. Those who do not know, diuretic basically means it makes you pee more. So, and that tends to be what most fat burners also contain. They contain a lot of diuretics in them. So there's a massive issue with diuretics, and that is the fact they cause electrolyte balance disturbance. So electrolytes, I don't know how to explain it. I can't really explain what an electrolyte is. If you just look up on Google, look up what is an electrolyte, you'll find out. But basically, it disturbs the balance of those in your body, which is not ideal. Ideally, you want everything to be maintained through homeostasis. Those include, of course, electrolyte balances. So that's the issue with diuretics. The issue with laxatives. Laxatives, obviously everyone's seen that scene in Dumb and Dumber where the Jim Carrey puts a crap ton of laxative in his friend's tea or coffee. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, so we've seen that scene. We know what a laxative is. If you haven't seen that scene, you need to go look it up because it's hilarious. So laxatives can actually cause hypoglycemia. Those who do not know what hypoglycemia is, the second half of that is for glycogen, so that is for your sugars. So basically, hypoglycemia just means lower blood sugar. Those of you who are diabetic will know exactly what hypoglycemia is, because it will be a pain in your ass at night or when you wake up the next morning. Hypoglycemia basically is just when you got low blood sugar. It can cause things like, feeling faint. If it actually gets too low, you lose a lot of your bodily functions. You can't speak, you feel very weak, those kind of things. So it also causes alterations in colonic anatomy. Obviously, I don't think I need to explain what your colon is. If you don't know what your colon is, I'm really shocked at how you managed to find this podcast. But yeah, actually manages to change the anatomy of your bum, basically your colon. So fat burners, quick sum up of them. I personally don't agree with them. I think they're probably the most useless supplement on the planet, and they are stupidly overpriced and marketed for that reason. Number 2, we have got fat burners. Okay, now why do we got Jesus. Number 2, we've got bulk shakes. Number 1, we had fat burners. Number 2, we got bulk shakes. So why do I think that bulk shakes are basically one of the most useless supplements around? I'm gonna get a lot of stick for this, but I believe that they are ridiculous because you can get more out of food at a similar price. Okay, so I've gone through and I've got 3 different mass gainers or bulk shakes or whatever you want to call them. Number 1 is My Protein's The Gainer, right? Number 2 is Optimum Nutrition. I believe it was Serious Mass. And number 3 was Time for Nutrition's Time for bulk or Time for Mass or something like that. Now, I looked at the calorie profiles. I looked at all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, don't get me wrong. In terms of calorie and macro profiles, your mass gainers are a little bit nicer with your carb kind of amount. However, when you look at the total calories, because that's what you're paying for in a mass gainer. You're paying for the calories, right? A mass gainer is meant to increase your calorie intake by just making it easy, and you just have to drink a little bit. You basically drink your food, which I don't know why you do that, because I love the taste of food. But anyway, regardless, my protein calories per container 9,024. Optimum nutrition 10,128, and time for nutrition 10,175. Okay. So the average price per tub was £27.66, and the average calories per tub was 9,775. Now I made possibly one of the leanest meals I could find. Okay, which is literally chicken breast, right? Baby potatoes for your carb source, and then steam bags, right? Literally vegetable steam bags. So this is a very lean meal. Okay, it's very lean. You're looking at literally single source of protein, single source of carbs, no fats. Okay, this is extremely lean. I think that in total, the most amount of fat per 100 grams on this is 1.9 grams of fat per 100 grams, and you're looking at 26 protein, and you're also looking at about 19.4 carbs of 19.6 grams of carbs. We got there. So the total cost for this kind of meal, chicken breast, baby potato, steam bags, would be around, right, £8.5. However, this gives you loads of servings. This gives you approximately 5 servings. Okay. Now, total calories for this meal, which would be, if we put all of those together, so you're looking at calories per container for the chicken breast, calories per container for baked potatoes, calories per container for the steam bags, right? You're looking at 1,782 compared to 9,775. Now that is a big gap, okay? That is a big gap. However, you also need to look at the fact that our total cost, instead of being £27.66, it's gone down to £8.5. Now, if you were to spend the same money that you spent on that bulk shake on these 3 items, right, you would get 6,124 calories from it. Still, don't get me wrong, it's a big difference, 3,600 calories between bulk shakes and this meal. However, keep in mind, as I said at the beginning of this is a very lean meal, right? This was literally probably one of the leanest meals I could probably find. The only way I could make it lean is by completely taking out the carb sources and stuff like that, which that is just, you might as well just not have anything at that point, right? If you're trying to bulk up, I'm giving you the leanest one you could probably find. So the more fat, this is the rule of thumb, right? The more fat you get in a cut of meat, the cheaper it is and the more calories it contains. Okay? Don't get me wrong, that is a rule of thumb. It doesn't always apply, but it's majority of time. Don't get me wrong. If you go for a fucking A5 grade Wagyu steak that's barely got any fat on it, it will probably be more expensive than a cut of meat from Tesco's, which is like, I don't know, like, it's got a little bit of fat on it. It's going to be way more expensive, but sorry, Wagyu steak with a load of fat on it. But you know what, you get where I'm coming from. Like, I don't need to explain myself to you. So again, more fat in a cut of meat, more calories, and it's going to be cheaper. So let's say, for example, right, this is a really good example actually, a chicken thigh, right? Each chicken thigh will have an extra 55 calories per 100 grams, and it will cost you £1.80 less compared to the chicken breast. Chicken breasts are £5 per packet, and they are 950 grams, I believe, with each chicken breast coming in at approximately 140 grams, question mark. So still, £5 for 950 grams. This one here, £3.20, and you get an extra 55 calories. If frozen, are you buying frozen stuff? Even cheaper. So this is what you really need to look at. Don't get me wrong, it's still not going to fucking taste as great as a chicken that's literally just been plucked out of your back garden. But if you're looking at mass gainers, you could probably do a lot better by, don't get me wrong, look, if you don't have the time, right, if you don't have the time to sit down, cook your meal, spend 30 minutes on it or whatever, however long it takes the chicken to cook, then fair enough. You know, if that's your situation, if that's your situ, then fair play. Then, you know, mass gainers might actually have something to help you out with. However, if you do have that extra 20, 30 minutes, whatever, even if it's a fucking steak, steaks take like 5 minutes to cook, bro. Like, with a steak, you literally throw your chips in the oven, go get ready for work or whatever, come back down, fry the hell out of that steak, flip it over like you're flipping pancakes in stacks or something, serve it up, and you've got yourself a meal. Like, you don't need mass gainers. They are, in my eyes, they're a complete waste of money, and they're just overpriced. I reckon if I really put my back into it, I could find you a meal that would cost you maybe a quarter of that price, right? A quarter of that price. Don't get me wrong, wouldn't have the same calories, but I reckon I could find it for you, and I reckon I can make it very economical and probably still be fairly easy to make. So that's all I'm going to say on that matter. Don't get me wrong, if you're going to go for like a carbonara and you're buying pre-made sauces and shit like that, then yeah, your price is going to be a little bit higher because you're paying for the convenience, the fact the sauce is already made for you. But let's say a carbonara, for example, pasta costs nothing, eggs cost nothing, cheese costs, you know, you could argue that one, and bacon costs, yeah, you could argue that one too. But you get like 700 calories per serving, and it costs you next to nothing. Like, I think, how much is it? Like a pack of pasta is like maybe £2 for like 250 grams of pasta, or 500 grams of pasta. Like, come on, man, I could make I could probably stretch it to 5 servings for that, for £2. Like, come on, sort your shit out. So, 2 mass gainers or bulk shakes or whatever the hell you want to call them, dust them away, chuck them in the bin, go to Tesco's, go to Aldi, go to Lidl if that's what you're into, go to Waitrose if that's what you're into, and get yourself some proper food, alright, and stop being lazy shit. So, third one, BCAAs. Okay, now, I'm going to get a load of shit for this. However, BCAAs are absolutely useless, and I will stand by that no matter who comes at me. I do not give 2 flying turds that could fly through my window at any point after I've said this, but BCAAs are absolutely useless, and I will tell you exactly the reason why. Okay, so, but before I do that, let's quickly go into what are BCAAs. Okay, so BCAAs stand for branch chain amino acids. Okay, now some of you, that might not make any form of sense whatsoever, and that's fine. However, amino acids are basically the most simple form of a protein. Okay, so you've got amino acids which then build to become like a protein and stuff like that. Just like you have got fatty acids turn into become like a molecule of fat. So amino acids, right? You have got some which are essential, some which are non-essential. Non-essential amino acids, your body can produce them on its own, right? It doesn't need you to consume them from your diet. Essential amino acids, they're called that because you need to eat them from your diet, otherwise you ain't going to get them. So there are a few essential amino acids, if I could quickly pull them up on my computer. So essential amino acids basically just means that your body does not actually make these amino acids. You have to consume them through your diet or through your supplements. Now, so the essential amino acids are the following. You got histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalamine, yikes, phenylalamine, threonine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. Okay, so the three that are BCAAs. So also, good point, BCAAs are EAAs. Okay, so branched chain amino acids are essential amino acids. Isoleucine, leucine, and valine. So those are the three kind of amino acids that can kind of make up BCAAs. Okay, most BCAAs will have a 2-1-1 blend of these, which is the ratio of them. Now, these are major components of intra-workouts. Okay, now, by saying that BCAAs are useless, yes, I am also saying that intra-workouts are borderline useless. Why do you need them? Like, what, will it give you some magic energy during your set? No, it won't. That's what pre-workout's for, but we'll get to that in a bit. So, negatives of them. A 250 gram pack of BCAAs will cost you 250 grams, right? That's 2 chicken breasts. Can I just point that out, right? This is how heavy we're talking. The smallest pack of pasta is 250 grams that I've seen anyway. Anyway, 250 grams of BCAAs is £11.50. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting. A 250 gram pack of whey protein, right? A complete protein, which means it doesn't only contain your BCAAs, it contains every single one of those essential amino acids I've just called out. Tryptophan, the one with La La Land in it, right? It contains every single one of them. And it also contains 4.5 grams of BCAAs per serving. And that costs you £4. Borderline 3 times cheaper. And it also helps you with recovery. A lot more than BCAAs will. So, let me ask you this one thing. Why would you spend money, right? If I turn around to you and I was like, right, here's the thing, right? I'm going to give you a chair. I'm going to give you a table, right? But on that table, it's only going to have one leg. And I'm going to charge you £10 for it. But I can also give you the option to buy this table for £3, but it's got all 4 legs. It's actually got a 5th one just in the middle, just in case the other 4 give out. Which one are you going to go for? And yes, both of them are made of teak wood, right? Proper good teak. None of them is made of like MDF or like whatever the other crappy plywood. None of them are made of plywood or MDF or crappy whatever. They're made of proper good teak wood. Which one would you go for? Right? The second one. If you said the first one, get in the bin, right? It's not indie, it's stupid. So, why would you pick a supplement that gives you 3 out of 9 essential amino acids when you could have a supplement that gives you 9 out of 9 amino acids? It doesn't make sense. So, and it's cheaper. It's literally nearly 3 times cheaper, for God's sake. Like, fucking hell. Anyway, so those are the stupid things about BCAAs that really annoyed me, right? And also, I've got a few, you know me, if I didn't have a study in here, it wouldn't really be a N.E.S.T podcast episode. So, we've got level of evidence. So I've got a table here which I compiled myself. It's got level of evidence, the outcome, the magnitude of the effect, and the consistency of the studies. So here we go. Level of evidence, 4 studies for this particular outcome. This outcome is aerobic exercise performance. Okay, so your aerobic stuff like running, cycling, swimming, long distance stuff, right? Not short bursts. That's anaerobic. Magnitude, there was a minor increase. Okay, minor increase. And the consistency is moderate, which means that it's not great. So high is the consistency that I would always take as at least the minimum, and very high is the consistency I would take as gold standard. So 4 studies, let alone, that's not a lot of studies, to look into an aerobic exercise performance with BCAAs. That's not a lot. 4 studies isn't a lot. I don't know what their ends were, what their numbers were, but aerobic exercise performance, they only found there was a minor increase. It wasn't impressive, nothing too fancy. Okay, so minor is the lowest like level. So you got minor, moderate, high. 3 studies looked at fat oxidation along with BCAAs. Again, magnitude was minor, barely anything, and plus it's 3 studies, even less, and the consistency is low. I'll come back to those 3 studies actually, because there's a really good point. 8 studies, so now we're looking at something with a little bit further depth. We've looked at fatigue. Okay, no, fatigue, there was a minor decrease in fatigue. Again, it is minor. The consistency is moderate again for those 8 studies, so I'm not really, I don't really know how to feel about that. Now, keeping in mind that they found there was a small decrease in fatigue, looking at fat oxidation, that could the extra fat oxidation could be because it could relate to the anti-fatigue. So obviously, if you're running for 10 minutes, you're going to burn more fat than if you've ran for 7.5, right? So it looked at fat oxidation. It didn't look at fat oxidation in relation to how long you've been running. So it could be because of the anti-fatigue effects, but we'll never know. We'll never know until more studies come out. So BCAAs, don't buy them. They're useless. Buy yourself some protein. It's cheaper. It's got more stuff in it for you. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's 100% protein's got a little bit more carbs and fat in it, but I mean, is it really that big of a deal for you? Like, you're working out anyway. Can't you just do like an extra 5 minutes on the treadmill to get rid of it? God. Now, glutamine. This is going to be interesting. So glutamine, I've got 3 very interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone using glutamine, but I looked it up, and apparently it's a fairly popular supplement. I think it's fairly popular over in the US. Now, glutamine, what is it good for? So there's 2 studies. Right, it's a really small amount of studies here. They looked at blood glucose in relation to glutamine. They found that there was a minor increase, and however, the consistency of those 2 studies is very high. So I'd much rather have 2 studies that's very high instead of having 3 or 4 studies that are like really low in consistency or even moderate, because it at least shows the fact that they both found similar kind of concepts, right, if that makes sense. They found a similar kind of outcome. So they found that blood glucose was a little bit higher. Obviously, glutamine has got to do with glucose. GLU at the start always have to do with glucose. So they found there was an increase in blood glucose, right? There's also a minor increases in insulin. However, that could be because of the glutamine ingestion. Obviously, as soon as you ingest glucose, your insulin will spike. Those who do not know, insulin basically regulates your blood glucose levels. So the more blood glucose you have, the more insulin will be pumped into your bloodstream to lower those blood sugar levels. Any diabetics will know that insulin, basically in diabetes, insulin does not function properly. Your body does not know when to produce it, and it doesn't know when to... Your body basically just doesn't produce it, right? Your body does not in type 1 diabetes, your body does not produce insulin. Your pancreas is basically fucked, which means type 1s have to inject themselves with insulin depending on how much carbohydrates they have eaten and what those carbohydrates are. If they're complex, yeah, you're in a little bit of trouble. If they're simple, you're in a little bit of trouble. If they're complex, you can manage them a little bit easier. Now, this is a very interesting one, and I really want to look at this in the years to come, because this really spiked my interest. So 3 studies actually found out that there was a minor decrease in symptoms of Crohn's disease. Now, their consistency is low. However, that's impressive. The fact that something that contains glucose can decrease the symptoms of Crohn's disease. I don't know how far this will go. The evidence appears unreliable. That was a note that that was made. However, if that is true, then this could be something to look out for. I think there's definitely room for research in this area. So that's yeah. So glutamine potential decrease in symptoms of Crohn's disease, which is always a plus. Sorry, pardon me. I had a little bit of a hiccup there. Now, last but not least, okay. Oh, I'm gonna hate myself for saying this so much. So, last useless supplement: pre-workouts. Now, hear me out, all right? Before you come at me with your pitchforks, hear me out. Okay, I looked into a couple of studies about this. So, number one comes from Tinsley et al. In 2007. There was 45 participants, but 21 completed. So, still, N21 is a decent number. It was also a double-blind placebo trial with a control group, and it was looking at my mic wire is starting to get a little bit annoying. So it was a double-blind placebo control trial on concentric and eccentric muscle force. They used a pre-workout versus a placebo versus a control group. So what is pre-workout? Okay, pre-workout contains a lot of things. Caffeine is probably the one that is the biggest component of it. Caffeine does not cause your face to tickle or whatever. That's a different. I think it's L-arginine or something like that. Beta-alanine, I think actually it is. Yeah. So, Mr. or Mrs. Tinsley, my bad, found out there was no significant differences in any groups in terms of concentric and eccentric muscle force. So basically that is telling us that pre-workout didn't do anything, and it compared that to the placebo to the control group. So it's not even that to the placebo, it's that to the control group as well. So if the control group didn't do any worse than the placebo and the pre-workout group did, it showed that pre-workout didn't actually help with the muscle force. Now, pre-workout mainly is for muscle force or anything like that. You're not going to get bigger by it. You're not going to grow. It's purely there just for energy. So, it pushes you to do that extra rep, that extra weight, that extra, 100 meters if you're into running. So, but here's the thing, there's another 2 studies that say differently. Okay, so Martinez et al. In 2016 had 13 males, and they looked at the effects of acute pre-workout supplementation on power and strength. Again, not looking at size. So the results were the following. There was significant improvements in anaerobic, again, not aerobic, this is not using oxygen, okay, anaerobic peak and mean power values in the pre-workout group over the placebo. So this is actually showing that there is a benefit to having pre-workout instead of not. And then finally, Gonzalez et al. In 2011, there was 8 people in that study, and there was an increase in reps performed in pre-workout over the placebo group by 3 reps. So people who had actually consumed pre-workout did an extra 3 reps, while the people who didn't and had the placebo only did 23. I would have been really interested. I'd really like to have seen Gonzalez to have included a control group, purely because obviously you're looking at if both people have, let's say, if both groups, the placebo and the pre-workout group, have done around the 20 mark, I would have liked to have seen a control group, because if they would have also done around the 20 mark, I would have been a little bit skeptical about them. However, if the control group had done below, so like, let's say, 10, 15, or around that area, I would have been a little bit more impressed. So that's my that's the discussion side of that. I would have liked to have seen a control group, but from what I saw, there wasn't one. So why did if there's 2 studies, 2v1, right? And they're both saying that the two are saying that there is actually a perk to using pre-workout. Why am I saying that it's a useless supplement? And this is more my take on it. Okay, if you need a pre-workout or some form of stimulant to get you going, you're not in the right mindset to train. But that's not the important bit, okay? The bit that I really, the thing that I would ideally would prefer would be the fact that pre-workout, you're using an external source to get you hyped up, right? You're not using internal motivation, You're not using extrinsic motivation. It's more of like an external thing that will help you. Plus, you can also grow, not tired of it, you can get tolerant to caffeine and the pre-workout. I did about a year or so ago. I actually got to a point where I needed to get 4 shots of pre-workout. I actually did four scoops of pre-workout to actually get me to that level where I could, like, you know, fully like go at it, balls to the wall kind of thing. And at that point I looked at myself, I was like, you know, I think I might need a break from it, because it's not that it doesn't help, right? It does, it really does. But I don't think it's worth spending an extra 30 quid or whatever, or 20 quid or whatever, on something that you could probably do on your own, right? You could get motivated on your own. You can remember why you started going to the gym, why you started running, why you started weightlifting, whatever. You can visualize yourself like on your goal, right? So the main thing that motivates me now is knowing that I am the hardest worker in my American football team, and every single time I go to the gym, I want to give everything I've got to be that best person. So use that kind of motivation. Don't rely on a pre-workout. Don't get me wrong, if you're just using the pre-workout because, like, you know, whatever you want a little bit of extra energy, then fair. But what I'm saying is, don't get reliant on it, and don't be like, oh, you know what, I need to take pre-workout because I feel like ass and I'm not going to have a good session. Like, no, don't take the pre-workout and just start going ham. So first exercise, set the bar, right? Set the tone on your first exercise. That's that. So pre-workout, I don't want to say it's a useless one, but I would say that if you don't need it, don't get it, right? If your workouts are already good, you don't need it. Yeah, that's my point. So we've said the most useless supplements. Let's go to the best ones. This is I wasn't planning on doing this, but I thought, you know what, let's do it. So I have got four of them, right? 4 best supplements in my eyes. Number 1, we have whey protein. I think you could have probably seen that one coming. It's cheap, it works, it's a complete protein, it's got a complete amino acid profile, and, like, you know, it helps you rebuild, it helps you not grow, but it helps you out. All right, it does. And it's also a case of, if you struggle to hit your protein intake, this is probably one of the easiest and cheapest way of doing it. Like, again, you saw 250 grams was 4 quid, right? That is less than, like, £4. You're looking at, like, less than a packet of chicken breasts at this point, and chicken breasts are pretty high in protein. So whey protein, 100% one of the best supplements out there. Like, fully would. Number 2 is Trent. No, I'm joking. No, I wouldn't recommend it. So number 2 is creatine. Might as well be Trent. No, it's not. So creatine, again, same point as whey protein. It's cheap, right? You're looking at a pathetic amount of money to throw into creatine. Like, it's, I genuinely reckon, like, you could buy it even you know, like, that day before your paycheck hits, and you're just sat there like, I need that because right now I'm sat on like 15 quid. I reckon you could get a decent amount of creatine still and still see yourself through the day. Like, I'm not gonna lie. So it's cheap. There is an increase of power output. There is an increase in weight, increase in lean mass, decrease of fatigue. So would 100% recommend creatine. Again, like I the lengths, not the lengths, you might not see a massive amount of lean mass increase or a massive amount of power output, but you will see a significant amount, right? Not a significant, a statistically significant amount. So it's not going to be pathetically small. It might be small, but it's not pathetically small, right? Now, number 3 is a multivitamin, and specifically vitamin D. If you're not going to get a multivitamin, whatever, get a vitamin D. Now, here's the reason why I think multivitamins are a really good source. Number 1, they're simple, they're easy, right? You literally pop a pill, and you're good. I'm not talking about the bad kind of pills. No, I'm talking about multivitamins, not something else that has M at the start of it and then DMA afterwards. But anyway, yeah, so multivitamins 100% would be a go-to for me. I always have them with my dinner. I have one a day. Provides cover for most, if not all, the vitamins that you need. And when I say cover, I mean 100% of the daily recommended intake. And now, what I was talking about vitamin D. If you live in a dark country, Iceland, Norway, Denmark, UK even, you are actually at high risk of having a vitamin D deficiency. And yeah, you probably know that because of the sun. We don't get a lot of sun, therefore the sun's rays actually help us. It doesn't actually give us vitamin D, it helps us synthesize it. So we've got a few bits and bobs that we need, and they're like here, and then you just need the sun to bind them together and make vitamin D. So we can't synthesize vitamin D off the sun, which is a massive thing. So if you could get yourself a vitamin D like pot or whatever, if you're not going to get multivitamins, Jesus Christ, multivitamins, then do get yourself a vitamin D supplement, because again, vitamin D is fairly important for your mood, for your well-being, especially your mood actually. Vitamin D does actually have a massive a toll on your like day-to-day mood, which is important, of course, especially now with tier 4 coming back in and all that kind of jazz, and you're not allowed to leave your house and all that kind of stuff. If you're in a bad mindset, it takes you to a fairly dark place. So yeah, supplement your vitamin D, kids. Now, finally, beetroot juice. Now this, I'm going to get a lot of weird looks for this, all right, because some of you have never even heard of beetroot juice. However, can I just point out, it tastes vile, right? It's nasty. I wouldn't just... it tastes nasty. That's all I'm going to say. However, if you are anything that involves aerobic exercise, right? So if you're a long-distance runner, if you're a long-distance cycler, if you're a long-distance swimmer, whatever it is, okay? If you're doing anything that's not a sprint, then I would recommend you take beetroot juice. There is a good reason to that. So, beetroot juice contains a lot of nitrate. Now, nitrate then gets converted to nitrite, and then some of that nitrite gets converted into nitric oxide, which means that nitric oxide actually reduces the oxygen cost for energy in cardiovascular activity and aerobic exercise, which means you need less oxygen to perform the exercise, and you get less. So you need less oxygen to perform the exercise, which means that the more oxygen you intake, the more you're going to be able to go. I hope that makes sense. So it's basically like if I was to turn around to you and be like, you know what, I'm going to give you this magic thing for your car, and it's going to reduce the amount of fuel that you use. You're going to be like, oh shit, hell yeah. Instead of just going up to like Newcastle, I could go all the way up to Inverness with this car. Like it just increases the amount of distance you can go before you start getting tired, or not consuming or not intaking enough oxygen. So if you're a long distance runner, beetroot juice, 2 shots. I believe that's the recommended amount. I believe it's 2 shots. And yeah, just start supplementing that. Have a look into it. I I've got the dosing somewhere around here, I believe. I've got it in my physiology side of things. So yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff, right? Beetroot juice, as I said, it tastes disgusting. As much as it tastes disgusting, it's still pretty damn good. And it's pretty impressive. So yeah, acceptable daily intake of nitrate is 3.7 grams. Yeah, so beetroot shots, if you just take 2 of them, you should be grand. So yeah, it reduces the ATP cost of forced production, and it increases the PO ratio, i.e. it reduces the oxygen 2 cost for ATP synthesis. And ATP is, of course, the universal currency of energy. So not really universal. Yeah, it's your body's currency of energy. So that has been it for me today. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate you listening to me ramble on about supplements for an entire hour. Well, pretty much an entire hour. We're at 55.50 at the moment. Well, no, 55.60. Shit, my bad. So, again, thank you for joining. I appreciate each and every one of you. Have an amazing new year. Thank you for bearing with me, because last week was my birthday, so I didn't really want to be recording a podcast on my birthday. I had a few other things I needed to do as well, so I was a little bit, that week was a little bit hectic, so I appreciate you guys for sticking with me over the last week. Now, this episode should be going live on the 30th. Now, on the 31st, right, so tomorrow for you guys and 2 days for me, possibly 3 days, I will be releasing a podcast. It's going to be a small one, okay? It's going to be like a episode 5.5, and it will just be how to stick to your New Year's resolution if they have to do with fitness. So feel free to join me for that one. If they have to do with fitness or just anything else, really, I'm basically going to cover quite a few things for New Year's resolutioners. So if you are a New Year's resolution, you do have something to do in the new year, feel free to let me know in the YouTube comments. Feel free to tweet me at the N.E.S.T, and feel free to at me at your story at the N.E.S.T. And again, do keep in mind that if you do share us on Instagram, Twitter, anything, I will be giving you guys a shout out in the start of the next episode. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy your New Year's Eve. I hope you have had an amazing, incredible time over the holidays, got to see as much family as you possibly could with Boris kind of cock blocking us after Boxing Day. But thank you guys for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've learnt something. And I will see you tomorrow for that New Year's episode.